Hello and welcome to the Scatterable channel, and today we're going to be building the best $500 gaming PC in 2024. So you could build this, or you could buy an RTX 4070. One of these is going to be a functioning computer, the other is just a graphics card. So in today's build guide, we're going to be building a really cool white and blue gaming PC, which yes, this is going to be $500 if we do the math. The case is 63, the motherboard is 78, the CPU is 84, graphics card is 160 right now, the RAM is 30, the SSD is 34, the power supply is $50, and that comes out to, I think, just below $500 or $500 on the mark. And yes, this PC is gonna do excellent at 1080p. It's also gonna be able to stream to Twitch, YouTube, Kick, wherever you want. So in today's PC build guide, I'll show you how to put together this step by step, the parts going inside of it, how to install drivers, Windows, its 1080p gaming benchmarks. Can we get another one? And concluding with my final thoughts if you should build this PC or not, which I think you should, because it's gonna be set up for success. And if all this sounds overwhelming, don't worry, I have the entire parts list for this build in a pcbuilds.gg link in the description below that easily recaps all the parts going into this, what you should get, as well as helping you finding the cheapest parts for each of these components, so you can save the most money. So I'm not gonna waste any more of your time, let's get into the build right after a word from our sponsor. All right, so if you enjoy these budget PC build guides, I want to let you know that I could actually build a $300 budget PC and make a guide on it if you guys really wanted to see that. If you do, give this video a like, because how well this $500 gaming PC build guide does will determine if I could maybe do like a $300 or $600 PC build guide, because those are on the table. But whichever one of my PC build guides does the best is going to be usually the one that I want to make another build around. But anyways, to build this PC, all you're going to need is a banana, a pair of scissors, and an 8GB or bigger USB flash drive to store your Windows bootable media device on for when we finally get to actually install Windows onto this PC once we finish building it. Don't worry about this step until we get to that point. So for the processor, I'm gonna give you guys two options. You can either go with the AMD Ryzen 5 3600 for $84, or if you want to spend a little bit more, you can get the Ryzen 5 5500 for $91. Now, both of those CPUs will work with the motherboard we have for this build, which is a B450M motherboard from ASRock. What makes this special is that it includes onboard Wi-Fi. That's the only reason why I'm considering it. Otherwise, any other B450 motherboard you're looking at will work in this build as long as it's micro ATX. Even if it's a Ryzen 5000 series CPU, it should work out of the box with a B450 motherboard without a BIOS update. But in a nutshell, if you want to save a little bit of money, consider the 3600. It's a 6-core, 12-threaded CPU. It's got full L3 cache, whereas the Ryzen 5 5500 is a little bit more expensive. It's on the newer Ryzen 5000 architecture, but it has half the L3 cache of the 3600. So really, both CPUs are about the same performance. It's up to you which one you want to get, depending on availability and pricing. Anyways, if you open up your motherboard box, you've got a full-on manual right here that'll tell you everything you'd possibly want to know about this motherboard. It's a manual, come on. It'll tell you what you need to do. Here's our Wi-Fi antennas and I/O shield. We will need those. Here is our motherboard. Wabam. So go ahead and open up your Ryzen 5 3600 or 5500 box. Here is your CPU. Here is your CPU cooler. And there's one important thing I want to show you. With every CPU cooler, even aftermarket ones, is going to come with thermal paste. You will always have thermal paste in some way with your CPU cooler. Basically, you really don't need to buy your own thermal paste anymore in 2024. So go ahead and take your banana with a Phillips head screwdriver on top. And first, let's go ahead and remove these two black plastic brackets. All right, and once those two are off, you're gonna have these 4 holes you can go ahead and mount your CPU cooler to. But before we do that, let's go ahead and put in our Ryzen processor, locate the triangle on the bottom left of the CPU and line it up with the triangle on the bottom left of the socket. There should be 2 visible triangles. Move this lever, go ahead and drop this in, give it a little jiggle, make sure it's in there, then pull down this lever, and this is what the CPU should look like in the motherboard socket. So now take your cooler cooler, as you can see, you're gonna have these 4 screws right here. You're gonna put into these 4 holes. You can have the logo on either side, but I like to have it on the side with the VRM, so it's out of the way of the RAM. Take your banana, gently screw in one side, but not all the way. Then go to the adjacent corner, lightly screw this in, but not all the way. Rinse and repeat. And the reason we wanna do this one corner at a time is that way we put equal pressure on all sides of the motherboard from when we fully screw this in. There we go. And then the last thing I want you to do is let's go ahead and plug in our CPU cooler fan into our CPU cooler header on our motherboard. Always going to be right here, pretty much as close to the CPU cooler on the motherboard. You really can't miss it. And now let's install the RAM and the SSD. All right, so for our RAM and SSD, I have chosen a 16 kit of DDR4 memory from King Bank. This is running at a speed of 3200 megahertz with a CAS latency of 16. Like I said, this costs $30, and it's gonna match really well, I think, with the VRMs of the motherboard, which is pretty cool. Now, you don't need this exact kit of RAM to make this PC work. Any DDR4 3200 megahertz CAS latency 16 kit from any brand you look at will work on this motherboard, which again, if you look at the PCBuilds.gg link in the description below, that will always show you the cheapest RAM you can get for this PC while still being compatible. So don't freak out if it's different, but I'll try to link this nonetheless. Same goes for the M.2 SSD, which I've chosen, not a King Bank, but a King Spec NX M.2 SSD. Now, in order to make budget with this build, you're gonna need to go with a 512 gigabyte M.2 SSD, which costs about $34. But if you at all can spend up to a 1 terabyte version of this SSD, which is about $50, you're gonna get double the storage, and that is very much recommended to house all of your games and your operating system and programs onto a single SSD. So the RAM is gonna go into slots A2 and B2 on the motherboard. If you look at your motherboard manual and you look at where it tells you where to put in your RAM sticks, it's pretty much always going to be in those 2 slots on the motherboard, and installing these is very simple. So as you can see, these 2 little inserts right here on the RAM stick are different sizes, so this is going to only go in one way into the RAM slot. Put one of these in, give it a firm press, and then put it on the second slot. Make sure these click in all the way. If they're not clicking all the way, you're going to run into issues. Then for the M.2 SSD, we're gonna put it right here where it says M.2, but we need the screw for this, which is inside the motherboard. There we go. There's this little baggie here that's gonna let us screw down that M.2 SSD into that slot. So this is only gonna go in one way because there's this little notch here on the M.2 SSD that's gonna line up with the insert here. Press that in. To go ahead and open up your little baggie here for our tiny M.2 SSD screw. Take your banana here, and I'm gonna put in a Phillips head 1 attachment, so it's a little bit smaller than the regular Phillips head. Gonna put this screw on top of here, bring this down, and just simply screw this in, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. All right. And for the case, I've chosen this DIY Q something micro ATX dual glass cube style case, or a fish tank style case. I've used this case before in black in my $800 PC build. It works, it's cheap, it'll get the job done. And this time, this version comes with pre-included fans. So you get 2 here on the side and 1 here on the rear. And if you wanted, you could throw an AIO here on the top up to 240 millimeters, all fine and dandy. But for $63, I can't complain. It's gonna do enough for aesthetics and airflow, so we should be fine. And you don't need this exact case in order to make this PC build work. This is only available on Newegg, but if you wanted something from Amazon, if you check the PCBuilds.gg link in the description below, there are alternatives to this case that do the exact same job. They just may be from a different brand, or they could be a different price, but don't worry, it'll still work fine. Anyways, here on the back of the PC case, there's this little baggie right here. We have an extra PCI slot here, and here is a plastic bag full of screws that we'll need to put anything we want into this PC case. The motherboard, an additional AIO here on the top, hard drives, anything, the power supply, all the screws we need are gonna be in here. You don't need to buy any extras. Now, just so we take care of this now, before we put in the motherboard into this PC case, go ahead and insert the IO shield. So go ahead and open up this back panel right here. Let's also go ahead and take off the front panel here because we'll eventually need to install the motherboard. Oh, hey, look at that. Case manual, if you're confused at all with where to put in what inside this case. Anyways, here is where we need to put in our IO shield. There's gonna be 2 sides to this. There's gonna be a flat side and then a side with pokey bits sticking sticking out. We want the side with pokey bits on the inside of the PC case touching the motherboard and the flat side on the outside. Let's pretend we have our motherboard here and let's make sure we have the IO shield orientation correct, which it looks like it does. So now let's go ahead and press in one corner at a time into the PC case. So this is all the way in there, like so. Okay, so one thing I noticed is that all the fans here are already daisy chained and connected up, which is actually pretty convenient. And in fact, the RGB for this case is already pre-routed as well. So we can control the RGB from the reset switch on here, which is pretty cool. This cable is going underneath the motherboard and I wanna route it through one of these. So I'm gonna go ahead and temporarily disconnect this. And then for this, I'm also gonna go ahead and disconnect this, but I'll plug it in later through one of these holes. So before we place our motherboard into the PC case, let's go ahead and check how many standoffs we need for this motherboard. So if we count the holes here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 holes. And right now on the PC case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 standoffs. We're missing these 2 right here. And it looks like we'll need to move this down 1 standoff as well. So go ahead and use these standoffs that you see here on screen. They came with the PC case. You can hand screw these in if you want, but if these aren't fully screwing in all the way, then you can use a pair of pliers and go ahead and twist these in, or you can use this little standoff adapter if you have one of these lying around, which I fortunately do. So I'm gonna go ahead and fully tighten this one in then. And then I'm gonna go ahead and move this standoff down 1 peg. There we go. And now let's go ahead and insert our motherboard into the case. Again, our IO shield is already inserted, so we're good on that front. Bring this in, press it up against the IO shield so you can line it up with the standoffs here. Then you're gonna wanna use these screws that you see here on screen that came with the PC case, and we're gonna go ahead and screw these into the motherboard standoffs 1 by 1. Now don't completely tighten these when you put them in, because just like the CPU cooler, you wanna go ahead and put all of the screws in before we tighten all of them. That way we put equal pressure on all sides of the motherboard. So we're going to this corner, putting this in 3/4 of the way in, but not tightening it. Then we're going to this corner. Go ahead, rinse and repeat for the rest of the standoffs. Okay, and with this last standoff, we're gonna go ahead and fully screw this in into the motherboard standoff. Now let's go to the adjacent corner for this screw and tighten this one up all the way. Rinse and repeat, do this for all the standoffs. That way we can tighten this all off and be good to go. Now, like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and take these 2 cables right here and I'm gonna thread them through this hole because we'll eventually plug these back into where they were behind the motherboard though, so it looks cleaner and more professional. But this little cable right here is our 5-volt ARGB cable. This is gonna control the RGB on all the fans through our motherboard. So let's go ahead and plug this into our little 5-volt ARGB header down here on the bottom left of the motherboard. So I'm gonna go ahead and thread this into here. Then take your cable, put it into this 5-volt ARGB header, the one with 3 pins. And then once we go ahead and hook up these 2 cables to those 2 cables we have stuffed away back here, you'll have full control of RGB in your PC. So before we install the power supply into the PC case, we gotta deal with all of these cables first. So we gotta go ahead and plug in our front IO cables, so our power button, our audio jacks, anything like that here on the top of the PC case, and our fans into the motherboard before we put in the power supply, because it's gonna go right here, gonna cover up those cables. That said, if you are confused at all where to put in what inside this PC case, once again, this DIY PC case comes with a super handy manual here that shows you where to put in fans, even how to put in certain IO actually, if you wanna learn where to put in your HD audio or USB 3.0 header into the motherboard, which is pretty sick. And if you flip this around, it actually has instructions for how to plug in the 3 ARGB fans into your motherboard if you forget it all. All of your questions on how to build a PC are gonna be answered in the manual. It's not too much of an ask, right? Okay, let's go ahead and connect those connectors back with the 3 fans here in the PC case back together, since we had to temporarily unplug those so that way we can stuff them in the back of the PC case. So now this is hooked up. We're eventually gonna need to plug this into the power supply, so we'll wait for that later. But right up here is a cool little switch that allows us to control the RGB from the reset switch here on the top of the PC case. So in order to take care of this, let's go ahead and grab our front IO here and let's pull away all the connectors except for our reset switch. So let's just isolate this one. As you can see, there's 2 pins right here. That's where your 2 pins from the reset switch are gonna go. So put these in together, and now you've got this back how it was when you first got the PC case. So let's go ahead and plug in our USB 3.0 header first. It's gonna say USB 3.0 with the blue thing, hard to miss. You have a little notch right here that's gonna go right here with this insert here on the connector. Bring the two together, and that's that. Right here is our USB 2.0 header. If you look right here at the bottom of the motherboard, it says USB. So that's where you know how these two are gonna hook up. This is 2.0, by the way, so different than the 3.0. This will only go in one way. There you go. And here's our HD audio connector. This is always gonna go on the bottom left of any motherboard you choose. It says HD audio on the connector. You are not gonna mess this up. This is only gonna go in one way. There you go. And friendly reminder, here's our 5-volt ARGB connector for this fan right here that we connected when we first installed our motherboard. So here's all of our front I/O, and if you're wondering, the reset switch from this is being used to control the RGB, which is why we addressed that earlier. So now let's go ahead and plug these all in to where we're supposed to plug in our front I/O, which is always going to be on the far right, bottom right of your motherboard. If you want the exact pin layout, that can be found in the motherboard manual. It tells you where each of these pins are going to go. Otherwise, you can follow what I'll tell you here. HDD LED is going to go on the bottom left two pins like that. Right above HDD LED is going to be your power supply plus and minus, or your power LED plus and minus. And then right next to your power LED is going to go the most important switch, your power supply button. It's going to go right next to it. There's going to be an empty pin right next to it. It's going to look just like that. Now let's install the power supply, which is going to be this MSI Mag AB550BN. Now, like I said, for the majority of the other parts in this PC build, you don't need this exact power supply in order to make this build work. It just needs to be 80 plus bronze, and you got to make sure it at least has 550 watts of power. And again, the PCBuilds.gg link in the description below is going to show you the cheapest possible power supply for this PC that'll work and still have good quality, which this MSI power supply does have. This is probably the best budget power supply on the market. Got all the features you want without costing too much, and it has enough wattage to cover the CPU and GPU combo we have in this build. So let's go ahead and open this up. There's our power supply right here. Now the screws we need to install this power supply can be found with the PC case, baggie, or we can use what comes inside the power supply box. Doesn't matter which one you go with. What does matter is that you have the power supply cable for our power supply on hand for when we finally boot up this PC for the first time. So to install this power supply, it is super simple. Flip around this PC case. As you can see, this is where the power supply is gonna go. Make sure the side with the fan is facing outwards like this into the back of the PC case. And then we're gonna wanna fit this in like so. Let's go ahead and take these 4 screws that came with our power supply and simply screw these in into the back of the power supply into these holes one by one. There we go. And for the moment, leave this on the 0. And while we're back here, remember this? This is from our fans that came with this PC case. This is SATA power. We're gonna need a way to power on these fans. So if we look here on the back of the connectors from the power supply, we have some SATA connectors right here. Let's go ahead and plug in one of these into here so that is taken care of. And now let's go ahead and plug in motherboard power connector, CPU power connector, and eventually the PCIe power connector for our graphics card. First, let's go ahead and take care of that motherboard power connector, this big guy right here. There's a latch here on the connector that's gonna line up with this notch. Bring the two together. This is only gonna go in one way, easy peasy. Make sure this is pressed in all the way. On the top left here, here's our CPU power cable. You can't miss it. It literally says CPU, and it's gonna go right here. Again, latch to the notch. It's gonna go in one way. Press it in, boop, done. And here at the bottom, go ahead and string out your PCIe cable, because eventually we're gonna go ahead and put in the graphics card right here, which let's take care of now. And for the graphics card, I have none other than the Intel Arc A580. This is unquestionably the best graphics card you can buy right now, brand new, for under $200. And there's quite a few good reasons why. In terms of raw performance, the Intel Arc A580 here beats the Radeon RX 6600 thanks to some of the latest driver updates for the A580, which means the A580 for $160 is within striking distance of the RTX 3060, which retails for almost $100 more. Or I should say more like $290, which is absurd. This graphics card is still so overpriced. The A580 is definitely making the rounds. It is the only good option under $200 brand new, which is why we're going with it. Not to mention, it comes with 8 gigabytes of VRAM, but with a 256-bit memory bus, whereas the 6600, for reference, has a 128-bit memory bus, so you're getting better VRAM on this graphics card. It's also got the best ray tracing performance for a graphics card under $200 brand new. By the way, remove this in order to install the graphics card. And I think just about the coolest thing about it for its price is that this has the AV1 codec. So if you wanted to do any video editing with the A580, you can use the AV1 codec to export files in AV1, or even record or stream games to Twitch, YouTube, or wherever using this graphics card, all for under 200 bucks. It's a 1080p workhorse, and we're gonna put it inside our PC. So go ahead and remove these two little PCI brackets right here where the graphics card is gonna go. And as we can see, the top one here is unoccupied, which is why we're given this spare one. So we're gonna go ahead and unscrew this latch right here, take our spare PCI Express slot, put it right here, because this slot is not gonna be taken up by the graphics card, and we wanna make everything look neat and tidy inside the PC. And with these two available slots, go ahead and take your A580, insert it into the motherboard where this topmost slot is. Once you think it's gonna go in, give it a firm press and you should hear a click. Like that. And then go ahead and take the same screws that you use for the power supply and apply them to where the graphics card is here to insert it into the PCI bracket so it can stay in place and not sag. Now with all of that screwed up, I'm gonna go ahead and put back on the PCI latch cover here. And finally, the last thing we need to do is go ahead and plug in those PCI power cables into the A580. The latch is gonna go here like that. These are only gonna go in one way. You can't mess this up. Firmly press them in all the way. And now let's go ahead and see if this computer can turn on. All right, let's go ahead and turn on this PC for the first time. So first thing I want you to do is to go ahead and take that power supply cable I showed you earlier and plug one end into a wall outlet and the other into the back of the power supply here. And now you can go ahead and flick the switch from the 0 to the 1. And then of course, get your keyboard, get your mouse, plug that into the back of the PC. And then one of the most important steps that people seem to fail. Get your display cable or HDMI cable, it doesn't matter which one you choose. Plug one of these ends into the back where the graphics card is. So down here, if you can tell, where the graphics card is, and then the other end into the monitor. And then another thing a lot of people forget is to supply power to their monitor. Otherwise, it's not gonna turn on. So make sure to plug in power cable for your monitor. And finally, with all of that done, the final thing you're gonna need is that Windows bootable media device. Now, if you need a tutorial on how to create one of these, I have that linked in the description below. You can use any 8 gigabyte or bigger USB flash drive. It's free. You don't need to buy anything. Just take this, plug it into the back of your PC when you have it all done. And with all of that taken care of, press the power button and wait. Okay, I see something. If you see something that says reset your FTPM, just go ahead and press Y. That sometimes happens. If the PC turns on and off, just let it do its thing. Don't touch it. Eventually you'll see the Windows installation screen. And once you see this little circle, you are in. Now let's go ahead and install and set up Windows. Now let's go ahead and install Windows. So hit install now. Here's where you can go ahead and enter in your Windows product key if you have one to activate Windows. I went ahead and quickly bought one from our sponsor, MyCDKS. So you can see I've bought a few other keys from them. I bought one just now, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit get key, show key. There's our key. Let's go ahead and enter that in letter and number at a time. Okay, that is processing. Let's see if it goes through. Yep, that went through. I accept, next. Custom, there's our 1 terabyte drive, 512 gigabyte, and now we go ahead and wait. Okay, go ahead and choose your country of choice. Choose the language of your keyboard. If you want a second one, go for it. Here, you just want to go ahead and connect to your Wi-Fi. Now, this motherboard already comes with Wi-Fi built in, but if you're going to have this computer right next to your router and you want to use an Ethernet cable, that is fine to use as well. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and connect to our Wi-Fi so we can proceed to the next step. Here, you're welcome to name your PC. You can go ahead and set up your PC for personal use. Now, let's go ahead and sign into our Microsoft account. And this more or less is what we're going to use every time we log into the PC. If you have have a spare, say, Hotmail account from your Xbox days or whatever you use for your preferred Microsoft account, go ahead and log in using that now. If you're given an option to do this, just go ahead and hit more options, set up as a new PC, assuming you want to do that, set up as a new PC. Here's where to go and create your PIN. This is what you'll use every time you sign into this PC. Now for all of these privacy settings, and pretty much from here on out, I just decline or say no to any of the offers and such, just because I want a clean, bare bones Windows experience. So go ahead and do this, and then let's go ahead and install those graphics card drivers. Once you see this, let's go ahead and open up your preferred web browser of choice. I'm just gonna go ahead and do Edge because that's what popped up. Go and type in the name of your graphics card and then drivers. So Intel Arc A580 drivers. And right here on the top intel.com link, let's go ahead and click on that. Here we can see Intel Arc and Iris Xe graphics Windows. We want that because we're on a Windows 11 computer. That's pretty self-explanatory. And while that's downloading, let's go ahead and download the chipset drivers for our motherboard. So type in the name of your motherboard, which is going to be the ASRock B450M ACR 2.0. Click on the link. This is going to bring you to the main website page for the motherboard. Hit support, and here's a multitude of things. For one, if we click on download, we can download the AMD chipset driver. We can also download the Wi-Fi driver and Bluetooth driver for the motherboard. And we can also download the RGB software for the motherboard if you want to control the fans from software inside the PC rather than on the case itself. Also, if we click on BIOS here, we can download the latest BIOS for our motherboard, which you can have action to that. So here's go ahead and download chipset drivers, Wi-Fi drivers, and let's go ahead and download the RGB drivers for ASRock Polychrome. So let's go ahead and open up our graphics card drivers for our Intel Arc A580. And while that's going, I'm gonna go ahead and unzip each of these that we just installed from the motherboard support page so we can get ready to install those once we finish installing the graphics card drivers. All right, let's go ahead and hit yes and continue. We can see this. Let's go ahead and hit begin installation. I agree, accept, start. Anyways, just be patient. The screen might go black. The resolution might change. That's totally normal. Okay, so the installation finished, and we will need to restart this computer in order to apply the changes, but let's go ahead and not do that just yet. I'm gonna go ahead and hit finish because let's go ahead and install those chipset drivers and other drivers from our motherboard. So there's our chipset driver. We're installing that. Let's go ahead and install the Wi-Fi driver. And let's go ahead and also install the RGB software for the motherboard. Okay, here are our chipset drivers. Let's go ahead and install those. Okay, this has installed successfully. Let's go ahead and restart and apply those changes. But we also need to do two more extremely important things in the BIOS. So in order to enter the BIOS, we're gonna go ahead and spam the delete key whenever the brand of the motherboard comes up. And there we go, we've entered the BIOS, and there's two extremely important things we gotta do. First and foremost, if we go here to OC Tweaker, we can load our XMP profile. So there's our 3200 megahertz cast latency 16 RAM. That way we can utilize the full speed of our memory. But most important is we go here to PCI configuration. We need to go ahead and quickly disable CSM because we need to enable resizable bar. So let's go here to boot, where is CSM, click on that. Let's go ahead and disable that. Now we gotta go ahead and save changes and exit, but then we need to re-enter the BIOS to enable resizable bar. All right, we're back in. Let's go ahead and hit on advanced PCI. Now we can go ahead and enable resizable bar. And we definitely want to do this because if we want to take advantage of the full performance of the Intel Arc A580, you need to have resizable bar on. That is absolutely crucial for specifically Intel Arc graphics cards. But with that done, now we go ahead, save changes and exit, and finally we can get to gaming. Okay, let's go ahead and kick off the benchmarks. And yes, I am indeed recording and playing at the same time with this $500 PC with the Intel Arc A580 through the Intel Arc software. As you can see, I've got 1080p, 60 FPS using that AV1 codec that I talked so much about, which will give us the best video quality at the lowest file sizes since it's the best codec out there. Anyways, I'm gonna play the game. I'm gonna play Fortnite. This game is terrible. Now here's the deal. Those of you who play this game, from what I can tell, you guys don't even care about graphics, which defeats the point of honestly building a PC if you're gonna have graphics that are worse than a console. But you guys care so much about how much frame rate you get in Fortnite. You preferably like to have the performance API, not even DirectX 12, and you like to have everything set at the lowest settings. So that's just ridiculous. Check out the FPS meter on the top left. Oh man, we got Stutter Night actually right now, which is a game issue, not so much a hardware issue. But just waiting here, we're getting about 200 FPS. What happens when we actually get into a game? Oh man. On the way down, we were definitely getting stutters. I will not gloss over that, although I think that could be a game issue. Could be a driver issue though. Also, it could be the fact that we're using the performance API, and that's just cursed. As I said, it literally just gives you maximum frame rate. And oh my God, we're already gonna die. Oh, I won that trade, okay. But yes, is 200 FPS fine for you guys at 1080p on this $500 gaming PC? Please tell me it is. Okay, yeah, now the game is definitely stabilized, but in that loading screen, we were definitely experiencing some grade A stutter night. That isn't just on Intel graphics cards, but right now, from what I can tell, is also on AMD and even NVIDIA. Although it's still kind of stuttering right now. I think I might rerun Fortnite, not on performance API, but on the regular DirectX 12, just to see if it resolves kind of the stuttering. Is the stutter night gone? Let's get on the ground, see what happens. Anyways, I guess while I'm in the air, let me go ahead and show you guys the graphics settings. So, like I said, we switched to DirectX 12 for our API. We're no longer using the performance one. And I've set everything to about medium settings, but view distance is set to epic for you gamers out there who need every advantage possible in this godforsaken game. And, oh, great, there's a guy down there that's already gonna bring my demise. Oh, let's see. So now we're getting about 31, 36, 38 FPS. We can do better than that. Let's go ahead and change some of the graphics. Let's put this down to TAA. Oh, we want that at medium. View distance, we'll keep this to far. Let's apply that, see what happens. Now we are chilling. Oh, we're getting close to 60. Oh, that's a stutter. All right, in true Fortnite fashion, I have done everything I can to make this game look like utter dog piss. And now, our frame rate is at a beautiful over 60 FPS at 1080p using DirectX 12, and the stutter, oh, no, that was a stutter right there. I don't think it's as bad though as before. And I'm dead. Told you. Anyways, there's Fortnite for you. Let's move on to a game that's much more optimized and just plays a lot better on PC. Because Fortnite sucks. Okay, once again, I am recording and playing games at the same time on this PC through Intel's Arc software. And just to show you guys, I recorded Fortnite twice, and one of the files was about 5 minutes long, 374 megabytes. The other one was about 4 minutes and 38 seconds, and the file size is 205 megabytes. If that doesn't show you how efficient the AV1 codec is, I don't know what else to tell you. I don't need to set it really any more than 10,000 kilobits per second, and the quality is still really good. Anyways, play a first-person shooter game that's just more my style, way better, way more optimized as well. There's gonna be no stuttering this, and the frame rate's gonna be really high at 1080p. All right, let me go ahead and show you guys the graphics settings. By the way, frame rate is on the top left. If you like what you see, excellent. Anyways, graphics settings. We've got a mix between medium and low settings. I've got anti-traffic filtering set to 4x, 2x MSAA. I've actually got Fidelity FX disabled because it looks better without it. And yeah. Oh, Deagle. Look alive, Deagle. Oh, nasty, nasty. Can we get another one? Oh, nasty, nasty. Can we get a third? Oh, we got a third. Y'all, that was some grade A CS2 gameplay right there. The 2 headshots with the Deagle, mint. Absolutely mint. That's going into the highlight reel. Look, just look how happy my face is, man. This is how you do it. This is how you do first-person shooters. Anyways, the game is running really good. The Intel dev team definitely went in on optimizing CSGO when they first brought in their ARC graphics cards, and it's good to see that they've continued that into CS2. Ooh, that wasn't me. Frame rate's good, performance is good. I don't feel hindered in any way. Let's move on to the next game. Okay, here's a game I have not yet shown you guys, but I believe we need to go ahead and take a look at it. And that is Baldur's Gate 3. If you're someone who isn't into first-person shooters or any crazy adventure games, although Baldur's Gate 3 definitely could be considered an adventure game and you want something a little more laid back, top down like this PC can absolutely do it. I know I'm just in the tutorial menu, and honestly, I don't know what I'm doing. I need to actually dedicate some time to this game because I respect it so much. I can't just pick it up and just whimsically go into it. I need to give it the time and appreciation it deserves with actually creating a character that I like and all that. Apologies for my jumbled English. It's kind of late, but game looks good. Let me show you guys the graphics settings. You're running the game at 1080p, like I said. We're recording the game as well. Ultra quality, well, before we get to that, we are at the Ultra preset. So as you can see, everything here is high to Ultra, but we have FSR 2.2 turned on. So although we have an Intel graphics card, AMD FSR can work on both Intel, NVIDIA, and AMD graphics cards. So that's gonna be nice. And yeah, ultra quality, I mean, we could go to quality and that will give us a sizable jump in FPS. Now we're gonna be in the hundreds. The difference is minimal, although ultra quality I think has a little bit better anti-aliasing. Yeah, is this a good enough representation of performance right here? All right, we're at a cutscene. We're getting about 100-ish, 98-ish. I can't spend too much time on this, but let's just go through this, see where it takes us. All right, let's fight. Let's do this. Yeah, here we go. Performance test, Baldur's Gate 3, hey. I'm happy. Game looks good. Let's try one final game. Anyways, a question you guys might want to know is, can this run Cyberpunk? Or better yet, can this do ray tracing? Well, for some reason, Cyberpunk doesn't want to run at 1080p right now, which is a little bit upsetting. So we have to stick it with 1440p. And right now I am running the ray tracing low preset right here, but for the Intel XeSS super sampling, which is Intel's version of DLSS or AMD's FSR, I'm gonna go ahead and run it on the performance mode. Yeah, let's try that. And here we go, ray tracing, blah, blah, blah. Frame rate is on the top left. If you like what you see, fantastic. This is at 1440p, mind you, on a $500 PC. This should be 1080p, but you know, here we are. This PC can punch above its weight when you ask of it to. And there's no frame drops. There's no stuttering. As you know, per usual, Fortnite, aka Stutter Night, is terribly optimized. Here's a good example of a game that is well optimized, just like CS2, just like Baldur's Gate 3. Again, most of the drivers, so if you guys hear about, that comes down to the game, mostly, for the most part. If you look on the top left as well, there's measuring of how hot the graphics card is getting, and I don't think we've gone above 75 degrees Celsius at all, so that's nice. With the stock fan configuration. Game looks good at 1440p. This PC is punching well above its weight category. What is shooting at me? Let's close out the video. All right, so let's go ahead and conclude this PC build video, but first I wanna answer some common questions I know you guys are gonna have, and I might as well go ahead and answer them right now. Since this is a $500 gaming PC, you're probably gonna wanna upgrade it at some point in the future to get more performance, and you may be asking what kind of CPU and GPU could I upgrade to in the future? Well, for the processor, it's very straightforward. Even on a B450 motherboard like this, the most I would look into, or ideally what I would get, is a Ryzen 7 5700X 3D. Or if you can still get one, a Ryzen 5 5600X 3D. Those are two excellent high-end gaming CPUs that aren't going to be drawing tons of power from your power supply and should be enough on a standard B450 motherboard like this without thermal throttling, as long as you have an adequate cooler. Like what I've gone ahead and done with this build, I did some modifications to it to make it look a little bit cooler. That said, this AIO that I'm rocking here from Thermalright, which you'll find in the PCBuilds.gg link, is only $45. Not too shabby. And same goes for the blue sleeve power supply cables. That's merely aesthetic. You can get away with the stock cooler, but just like I said, if you wanted to upgrade the CPU at all in the future to something faster for more frames per second, you're gonna need an aftermarket cooler of some sort, whether it be a water-cooled or air-cooled one. Then for the graphics card, whatever you want really, as long as it's supported by the wattage of your power supply. So right now, there is a 550 watt MSI power supply in this build. So you only wanna look at graphics cards that can be supported with a 550 watt power supply, which they'll have that listed on the website of the graphics card. So say for instance, you wanted to look if maybe like an RTX 4070 or an RX 7700 XT will work in this build. We'll go ahead and look up the name of that graphics card on Google and add on to that recommended power supply, and there it'll give you an answer as to the recommended power supply. And in that kind of case, you may want to go ahead and upgrade your power supply to something with more wattage to support that faster and more power consuming graphics card. Or you can just get something with more wattage right off the bat, like say getting a 750 or 650 watt power supply in this build. That way you don't have to swap it out for a higher capacity power supply in the future and be set in stone for any future graphics card upgrade. But on a final note for performance, this I think met all expectations with the exception of Fortnite, although I really think that game at the moment is running into some optimization issues. I'm seeing the word stutter night come up a lot in the forums, so this looks to be an issue across all graphics cards, which would explain why our footage was not the smoothest out there. Because as you saw in CS2, in Baldur's Gate 3, and in Cyberpunk, we didn't encounter any stuttering, so that might have just been a game-specific issue, not so much a driver issue on the ARC A580, because it's been about almost coming up to 2 years on the releases of these ARC graphics cards, so they should be fairly well ironed out by now. And if there's any instances where they are unstable, that will probably just boil down to the game just not wanting to work with an ARC graphics card. Kind of like Starfield, how the devs for that game from Bethesda just somehow have not gotten around to properly optimizing that game for ARC graphics cards. And like I said, this is a $500 gaming PC at the end of the day. It's your oyster, you can play around with it, you can upgrade certain things, make it faster, add more storage, whatever you want. It's a computer, you got all the freedom in the world to do with it. So if you want to build this PC, I've got it all in my PCbuilds.gg link in the description below, all neatly laid out for you so you can pick up all the parts yourself. And if you enjoy these PC build videos, definitely give it a like. That'll help the performance of this video so we can make more of these. And if you enjoy my kind of content, then yeah, you should subscribe, especially if you made it to this point in the video. You've liked what you've seen, you've made it all the way, why not? So with all that said, thank you so much for watching, and this is the Skydival channel, signing out.